Hey everybody, this is an unplanned, unscripted, mostly unedited, and unnumbered episode. We just thought we would give Rebecca Heineman a quick remembrance after her passing. And I actually did kind of expect having to do this soon. When I saw her last Twitch stream, it almost seemed like she knew in a very sad way, but in a very accepting way. And yeah, she was a special person to me. She's been on the show a few times. When I wrote her to do the first episode, to do an interview, I accidentally wrote her from my work email address. And 5 minutes after hitting send on the email, my phone rang. And I never answered it because who answers phones? But it ended up being her. She knew I was a fan and she thought she'd give me something special, like a phone call, which I really appreciated. Of course, until we did the interview, I kept our conversation through email, and I really enjoyed interviewing her. And at the end of this episode, I will play the last interview that we published, and really ended after that. So no real outro or anything, just pasting in that interview so you guys can hear her thoughts on many topics. She's also a special person to me because she wrote my first favorite game, and it was Task Times in Tonetown, specifically on the Apple II GS, which, if you listen to this podcast, you knew I was probably going to mention the Apple II GS. And so if you look her up on Moby Games, you see her interacting with over 230 companies with many game credits. She's a co-founder of Interplay. She wrote a lot of Bard's Tale 3, and I almost think most importantly, she wrote BurgerLib. So BurgerLib is a C and C++ system library that it'll help you write a video game, but you could really use it to make creating a game engine on older systems and modern systems that much easier. It gave you cross-platform file system handling, memory endian alignment utilities. It had math helpers and threading helpers, compiling helpers, logging, debugging, unit testing, normalized macros, hashing, compression. It just did so much stuff that just made really porting games from system to system a lot easier. And that makes sense if you know a lot of her work. She ported so many things, and she did it very quickly, and it was the help of BurgerLib. I forked BurgerLib a long time ago, and when I thought she was going to pass, I actually emailed her asking if there was anything that she left unfinished on it, something that she would like completed on it, or any wishes for BurgerLib, but I sent my email too late. But it would be fun if we tried to add a few other systems to this, maybe the Dreamcast, something like that. But that'll be for another podcast, another project. But yeah, BurgerLib, worked on MS-DOS, Windows, classic and modern, Mac OS, Linux, Android, iOS, almost all the PlayStations. 5 is the only one it didn't work on. All the Xboxes up to Xbox One. Game Boy, DS, DSi, 3DS, GameCube, like everything through the Switch. If you could, if it had a C compiler, it worked. It used to work on Apple II GS, older Macintoshes, BOS, Amiga, the N-Gage, Ouya, and a lot more. But she commented out those parts because they weren't used anymore. In saying all that, she'll be greatly missed. It was a lot of fun interacting with her. And we did have some listener feedback, some memories of her. I already said my favorite game of hers was Task Times in Tonetown. I'd like to give a shout out to Rock and Roll Racing, which I'm not sure what she did on that. I just know some involvement. But SM Oliva writes in saying, his favorite game of hers was Baldur's Gate 3, and that he remembers while playing Baldur's Gate 2, you really couldn't create a female character. And so it was Rebecca Heineman that really pushed having females in Baldur's Gate 3. And I guess Cranford denies this, but in any case, I think it is a good mention. So Awesome. Thank you for that feedback. Eric from the Pacific Northwest writes in saying that he's looking forward to hearing the interview on the show. He forgot she was on this, and that knows that she was on the Retronauts and a few others, and worked on a lot of obscure system ports. And he says that he does know that she worked on Icewind Dale and Baldur's Gate 2, two games that contributed to his love of D&D and Western RPGs. So thank you guys so much. And without further ado, this rebroadcast of her interview. And then we'll end it right after that. And I hope you enjoy it. All right, we're here with Rebecca Heineman. Thank you so much for joining us. For anyone that somehow does not know of you, also known as Burger Becky, let's just say you have probably written many games that we have all played on. You are an accomplished Space Invaders champ, coder of kernels for many Sony systems, and probably a whole lot more I'm missing there. There's no really complete website with all your work on it.
Well, no. Hello, I'm Rebecca. It's because I've been in the business for over 40 years, and when you have over 250 games with your name on it, it's there are times where someone would come up to me and say, "Hey, Becky, nice work you done on this game," and I honestly say, I don't remember working on it. But now that you mention it, yes, I do remember working on that game. And that's when I'm sitting there flabbergasted going like, holy heck, I'm actually forgetting projects I actually spent weeks, if not months on. And they're totally like, unless you mention it, I totally forgot about it.
That's great. Well, how did you get started in programming video games?
Well, that's actually just a dovetail from me winning the Atari National Space Invaders Championship back in November of 1980. At that particular point in time, I had already been an accomplished Apple II programmer designing peripherals, mostly so I could pirate Atari 2600 games. But because I had to get these skills, it meant that I became a computer programmer by default. Mm-hmm. Because I was now this video game champion, I started learning how to actually program the Atari 2600. I taught myself, which then led me through connections through this video esports world to my first programming job with the Avalon Hill Game Company. And I have been literally professionally programming ever since.
I heard a rumor that you actually lied about your age to get a job pretty early in programming.
That is true. When I was before I even did the championships, I was working at JCPenney. I was working at the Electric Planet Video Game Arcade. And all these jobs I did, I was definitely not 18. I was more like 15, 16 years old. Mm. And because I had already run away from home and so forth, I had to basically tell everybody I was 18, because in California at the time, you could get a job when you're 16 if you had your parents' permission. But if you're not around your parents, you have to then tell them you're 18. But of course, back in 1978, 1979, they just took your word for it.
Yeah.
They never mentioned it.
So how do you teach yourself to program Atari 2600 all by yourself?
I would have to totally lay the blame on the Apple II computer. The Apple II computer has built into it a disassembler that allows you to look at 6502 code built into the ROM, the Apple II. You don't buy anything. You just turn on the computer, type it's a call negative 151, puts you in the mini assembler, and then you just type 800L, and you can actually just see 6502 code. In this case, the Apple ROM is F800L, and then you can see the Apple II ROM, and it's understandable. And of course, with the Apple II, there's manuals on how to program 6502. They even give source code to all their stuff. So with comments, it says, so these meaningless gibberish on the left, the comment says it does this. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the next meaningless gibberish, and after a while, it becomes from meaningless gibberish to, I actually can program this. And since the Apple II and the Atari 800 or the Atari 2600 use the exact same microprocessor, it meant that if I took an Atari cartridge, disassemble it using the Apple II disassembler, it made sense.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. And I think genius for someone of that, so young to be able to just do, and it just led to a great career. And then from there, you went on to, correct me if I'm wrong, Apple II GS and doing one of my all-time favorite games. In fact, my first favorite game ever, Task Times in Tone Town, which I still think has the best theme song ever.
Yeah, so that was me and Russell. Sorry, Russell Lieblich, I believe it was. I hope I'm saying his name right, but he worked at Activision, and I drove down to Santa Monica, went into his studio, and we worked on that song together for like over a week because I was making a brand new sound driver for a brand new Apple II GS. And of course, when we both saw that there was a literal synthesizer chip in there, we were saying, we're not going to let this go. We're going to do something awesome. And that theme song came of it.
Yeah, it seemed like you really did push that system. And around that time, you also did what, Bard's Tale 3 and a handful of others too, right?
Oh yeah, there was Bard's Tale 1 and 2 for the 2GS. There was Bard's Tale 3 for most platforms. I created Bard's Tale 3. Then there was Dragon Wars, and of course stuff on Wasteland, and then it just pretty much every game at Interplay up until 1995. I either wrote it or had a heavy hand in it.
And in that time, is that when you created BurgerLib?
Yeah. BurgerLib was born around the very first iteration was born around 1985 because it was what I used to allow me to write an Apple II game and then quickly get it on the Atari 800 and the Commodore 64. That's why Mind Shadow, Tracer Sanction, Borrowed Time, and Task Times in Tone Town, when I did one version of it, I had the other versions up and running like a couple of days.
That's great. Yeah, so you don't describe it as a game engine, right? You just describe it as a game operating system?
Yeah, because it's a file system, a input system, graphics system. I mean, all the building blocks you use to make a video game engine. That's what it is. And of course, the first iterations was just written 6502 assembly for the Apple II C64 and Atari 800. Then later on, I then made a PC version of it in Intel assembly. But it wasn't until around the 3DO time when I wrote a new version of it all in C for the 3DO. And pretty much what BurgerLib today is based off that.
Wow, yeah, and it's still used on even like the Nintendo Switch and modern systems like that, right?
Yes, it runs on the Switch. It runs on the Oculus Quest 2. It's my latest addition to is full Vulkan support.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, yeah, this is definitely a tool I'd like to play with soon, try to create something with it. And yeah, you mentioned the 3DO. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you also ported many games in your career to 3DO. I think maybe Dreamcast and a few others. Could you talk about any of those? Maybe.
Yeah, Dreamcast. Yeah, I actually ported 2 games to the Dreamcast, but neither actually shipped. The Dreamcast was suddenly canceled from Sega. So when we were about ready to golden master these games, one was a Deer Hunter game, and the other one was, I think it was Sacrifice for Interplay. But I could be wrong on that one, though. But I just said, once we were getting on the finish line, that's when we were told, hey, Sega's no longer pushing the Dreamcast. We better stop development on these titles and then work on something else where we can actually make money. And of course, that was 1994, 93 or 94 was when I first was introduced to the 3DO. And it was mostly because I was already doing a whole slew of Mac ports for Interplay under the MacPlay banner. And so I was one of the experts on the Macintosh MPW development system, which just so happened to be the same development system 3DO uses. So I immediately switched over to doing that, and I did, what was it? It was Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, Siberia, Casper the Friendly Ghost, Shadowin, Kingdom of the Far Reaches, Out of This World, Battle Chess. There was like 9 games. I don't even remember all their titles, but I was just churning out 3DO titles for about 2 years, and then 3DO died. So then I moved to another console.
And you even ported Donkey Kong, right, to maybe Coleco? Is that correct?
No,
Okay.
I did not have any involvement with Donkey
Okay.
Kong on any platform. I think you're confusing maybe my wife because Janelle Jakeways had a heavy hand in Donkey Kong for
Oh,
quite.
there you go. There you go. So when porting games like that, were you often not even given source code or anything? Were there any really difficult projects that come to mind?
Oh, there have been several. The most notable one was, of all things, Redneck Rampage. My project was to take Redneck Rampage from the PC and put it onto the Mac. It was running on a thing called the build engine. The problem was that Interplay, because of some wacky licensing, because they got it from a place called Zatrix, not from 3D Realms, because 3D Realms, I think, was the company that actually did the build engine. But 3D Realms licensed the build engine to Zatrix, who in turn licensed Redneck Rampage built on it to Interplay for publication. Somewhere along the line, no one signed a contract that would say, we get the source code to the build engine. So when I got the source code, and I'm going to use quotes on this one, of Redneck Rampage, it had all the code from Zatrix, but then it just linked in a library called build.lib. And we didn't have the source to that. And when I asked about it, it says, oh, yeah, sure, 3D Realms will license us the source code, write a check for 20K or some high number. Which remember, this is $1993, so 20K is more like 40 or 50K.
Yeah.
And at that point, it says, okay, screw this shit. I'm going to, sorry about the bad words, pull up a disassembler, disassembled it, and then we literally line by line translated it from Intel assembly to in this case, it was PowerPC assembly, actually in C, and then compiled it. And sure enough, it ran after we got it all done. And then we found the functions that were running slow, actually ported those back into C. So the compiler did a better job. And that's what we shipped.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I'm trying to think. You also did Doom, Wolfenstein. I'm trying to think of a few others. Yeah. And then,
Too many.
yeah, yeah. And then you moved on to do a lot of kernel work for Sony, right? Those systems?
Well, I also worked at Microsoft too. I worked on Microsoft on the Kinect. And then there was a project called Trioxide at Microsoft I worked on, which is now being used in the Xbox One because what the project was an Xbox 360 emulator that ran on a PC.
Oh,
There was a project at Microsoft, which really don't know how much I could say, but it involved the ability for you to take an Xbox 360 game and run it on a PC. And because they wanted to save money, they wanted to do it through emulation.
okay.
And so I worked on the PowerPC to Intel just-in-time compiler technology and all that stuff. And we had Halo running. It was running about 1/3 the speed of it on a Rails 360, but the fact it was running. And then the project was killed for reasons I don't know whether or not I can talk about. It had nothing to do with the project. It had to do with market conditions. But then I come gleefully finding out later when the Xbox One was released that they took that project out of mothballs and then started working on it again. And now that's what they use to run Xbox 360 games on the Xbox One.
Oh, wow. Which I heard runs fantastic.
Oh, well, considering that PCs have gotten a lot faster since the day when we did that particular project. The Trioxide project was back like in 2008, 2009. So, with 10 years of PC evolution going from 1/3 the speed of Halo, we should have no problem running.
Yeah. With many more cores. Yeah. Yeah.
With a lot more cores there. You have that too.
So, yeah, I mean, your hardware career goes, from VIC-20 really to PlayStation 5, right? So are there any systems that stand out to you as your favorite to code for?
Lately, my favorites have been the code for is the Xbox One and the Nintendo Switch. Those are my two most favorites. The Switch because it's just simple. There's no fluff or anything. You just at startup, write a few lines of startup code, then of course a trillion lines of Vulkan, and then start drawing stuff onto the screen, and you're done. The real challenge is making it a good Switch experience, being able to plug in, having the screen change sizes, and the fact you have a touch screen as well as a joystick. Those are design challenges, not coding challenges. The Xbox One is the fact that it basically it's a Windows box. So I just write the game on Windows, and then once it's like 99% complete, then I just make a few changes to the code and it just runs on the Xbox One. So that makes development so much easier.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that is cool. And you did do the last time we talked, you couldn't talk about the PlayStation 5 at all, so it's nice that that's already released. Can you tell us about the work you did on that, or is that still under any
I was just
NDA?
working on it for it. I was just working on a game for it. I wasn't involved with Sony or any of the kernel work. That was the PlayStation 4.
Okay.
We call it Project Orvis at the time, but I did some kernel work and stuff like that. But that's ancient history today. PlayStation 5, I had no involvement, but I was working on the game for the PlayStation 5. My work on it is long done. The game has not been announced or released as far as I know, so it's still can't talk about it.
Oh man, man. And then you said the other thing you can't talk about is the Amico, other than it exists, correct?
Correct. One of the things I'm working on right this second is a product on the Amico. To those people out there who think the Amico is a scam, well, it's a very real scam because it's not in the sense that it's real. It's not a scam. I mean, I've got a unit. It looks like what they say it's going to look like. So, I mean, this thing looks like I could just probably unbox it from a real store unit. It's just, of course, I didn't get it from a box. I got it from a cardboard box with packing peanuts in it because it's a prototype. But I am developing a title on it. That anything more, I'm definitely very violent.
Yeah.
NDA.
Yeah, I won't push that anymore.
But it's going to be nice. Hopefully they'll hit their ship date, which I think is October or something this year. I mean, the only thing I'm worried about is just the global chip shortage, because that's affecting everybody manufacturing stuff. So let's hope it doesn't affect them. So that's all I can say.
Yeah. No, I could definitely see that happening. And two things I forgot to mention while I was giving your intro is you have started many successful businesses developing video games, and you are also a successful comic book author. Did you want to talk about your comics at all?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Back around mid 2003, 2004, I wanted to write a novel. It was one of those things where and it's because I teach myself how to do things by doing. Mm-hmm. This is just the way I learn. I really can't go to school and learn because it's just not the way I take in information. So I saw this anime called Ranma 1/2. Now, 2003 is already old because it came out like in 1995, 96, but I only discovered it in 2003. And I fell in love with it, loved it, wanted more stories. Then that's when I discovered fan fiction. And of course, like the internet, 90% of it is garbage. But then there's 10% of it. It's like, this is solid gold stories, novels, continuations. And then I also fell in love with another show called Sailor Moon. And hilariously, there is a subgenre of fan fiction where Ranma meets up with the Sailor Scouts and he becomes a magical girl, much to his dismay. And so I read a whole slew of different novels and stuff like that. But the thing I didn't like was the fact that they always took liberties with the characterizations of both sets of characters. And I thought maybe I should try my hand in it. So I then read one story called Sailor Ronco, written by a guy named Fire, otherwise known as Duncan Zillman. And I got permission from him to basically say, just take the story. He said, here, you just take it. I don't care anymore. And so I took it and I then made it did some edits and stuff like that. And that's what's posted on my website. But then worked with another author to make a small, tiny sequel about it called Twice in the Millennium. But then I took it from there and made my own story called Sailor Ronco Tunnel Vision. It was my very first attempt at a novel, so therefore, anybody who reads it, I really need to go back there and edit it and so forth, because it's like, man, I definitely was writer 101. I would get graded on it. But the story itself was what took the fan fiction world by storm, because they could not believe that somebody could write a story where you take Ranma, meets the Sailor Scouts, and then halfway through the story, you find that the villain is none other than Skynet and the Terminator.
That's amazing.
And everything worked seamlessly, in which whenever you have the characters of Ranma and Sailor Moon, there's some comedy, magical girl, but when the Terminator shows up, it basically is a scene straight out of Terminator where people are getting shot. They're killed. There is like world-ending destruction and so forth. And if it goes back and forth with it, and of course, because of time travel is involved, by the time the story ends, it pretty much is reset, and everybody's as if it never happened. But because I got so popular with it, I made a couple more novels, one with Godzilla, one with some demons, just done strictly for laughs and so forth. So each one I did a novel with a different, again, first one hard sci-fi, next one just a comedy, next one was, basically Godzilla, kaiju thing. Because I was teaching myself how to do it. And of course, as you read each novel, you will notice I'm getting better and better until like the last novel I've done, people are saying, why isn't this in print?
Yeah.
Well, because of the fact that I got some fans, some of them were doing comic books. And they said, boy, it would be great if we did a comic book. So, how hard would it be to teach myself to do a comic book? And since I already had this story, why not make a comic book form? And then that's when Sailor Ronco was born. Now, granted, I can't draw. I just simply, art is not a skill I possess, and it's one where I don't have the time or energy to really learn. So in this case, I hired an artist. And I hired some people who needed the money so that they started doing the drawings for me, and I did the writing. So which is why, as time went on, the story, got really involved and really, really good, and people liked it. But then I had artists approaching me to say, hey, the art on there is not really that good. What if I was your artist? And now I'm working with a guy named Erwin Prasyata, who is an Indonesian manga artist of quite note. And he's been redrawing all the pages of Sailor Ronco. We pretty much finished chapters 1 through 4 now, completely done in a brand new manga style. And it looks really, really nice. And I've already started the scripts on continuing the story. Now, granted, the story's been on hiatus for like about 9 years because I have to pay this guy. Because, nobody does stuff for free. And thankfully, because of the, years of successful businesswoman, I have the money that I can actually waste because I'm not getting paid to do Sailor Ronco.
Yeah.
To have him, make a living doing the art for me so that I can continue the story. And I have several fans are already going to me saying, oh my God, you're continuing the story. Yay. So
do you think Sailor Ronco will ever be a video game?
It's possible if I could get the rights to both Ranma 1/2's characters and Sailor Moon characters to do a game. But that would require me working with somebody who knows the Japanese character licensing rules and stuff like that. Because, when you do a fan fiction or a parody with known characters, there are certain things you can do as long as it's free. So like Sailor Ronco, I could do all I want as long as I don't charge a penny for it. But the moment I accept any money or do like a cartoon or something like that, where money is really changing hands, then the real copyright holders will have a word with me, unless I have a license.
Absolutely. Yeah, I used to be a big Ranma 1/2 fan back in the day, and there was never a good Ranma game or Sailor Moon game that I could find. They were always just kind of a little bit hacky.
Well, if Viz Media, if you're listening to this podcast, hey, give me a call or an email. Let's talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, final question. Is there any game that you've worked on? I know you've said you've created so many that it's hard to even remember them, that you would just like maybe to request our listeners to maybe go back and give it a shot. Maybe something from the 90s or early 2000s, something that, you hold dear to your heart.
Oh, there's so many that I hold dear to my heart. My number one, of course, is Bard's Tale 3, The Thief of Fate. Another one is Dragon Wars. That's available on Good Old Games right now, the original classic 1989 game. Other ones you can try on consoles would be, of course, Wolfenstein 3D, either on the Mac or on the 3DO. I'm very proud of the work I did on that. And, of course, Out of This World on the Super Nintendo and, of course, on the 3DO. Because the 3DO versions of Out of This World I'm extremely proud of how that game turned out.
All right, cool. Yeah. We will pick some of those games in our next game club for all of our listeners to play. So it has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Is there anything else you want to plug or mention at the end?
Well, of course, come visit follow my Twitter page at Burger Becky on Twitter. Of course, Old School, OLDESKUUL on Twitter. We are currently getting ready to publish Lawless Legends for the Apple II. We'll be coming out in a box set with a little metal badge, like a parchment map, floppy disks. We'll also come with a little USB stick that will have the game with an emulator so you can run on the Mac and the PC. And we're working with a group called 8-Bit Guys doing this game. And we hope to be shipping this in July. So Lawless Legends, of course, you can follow that as well on Twitter. But again, oldschool.com and oldschool on OLDESKUUL on Twitter.
All right. And our listeners could look that up in our show notes. And again, thank you so much and all our best to you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again to Rebecca Heineman for joining our podcast.
Yeah. I wish she would come on annually. She's just a great human being, great person, great interviewer and or interviewee, I guess. And every time I'm done talking to her, I think about a million questions I could have asked.
Now, did you see the Netflix History of Video Games documentary?
Oh,
that,
yeah.
That she's on. Yeah.
High Score, I think it's called.
Yeah. Yeah, so I watched that a couple nights ago, not because I knew this interview was coming up, but my wife was working late on something, and I said, great, wife's working late, I'm going to sit down and watch that Night Stalker documentary. Mm-hmm. And I get to the title screen, and then my youngest kid comes down, says she can't sleep. So I immediately changed it to something else on Netflix. But she enjoyed the documentary too, so it all worked out. The idea that there were like video game tournaments in the 80s was kind of mind-blowing, because there wasn't Twitch. Like how the video game tournaments worked. Like you had to fly the players out to the same city.
Yeah, they all had to fly to New York, and they were all on CRT monitors with Atari 2600s in front of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, just crazy. But yeah, I hope she'll be back on again soon. And yeah, thank you again for doing that interview. And I guess we've got a game plan. I guess I'll go first here.